Welcome everyone to this week's episode 31 for my podcast show, Nichel Anderson, Short Stories and Beyond, where I'm returning back from my summer break. Last week kicked off season 2 for 2018 to 2019, that it will run from September to May of the next year, which would be the last Monday of 2019. I started this podcast last year where I wanted to expand on my love of writing. That's my passion, and it's a part of my purpose. So I'm really excited of the successes that I received through podcasting. I enjoyed seeing different people that are picking up this podcast and tuning in. Now, this is a premium podcast, meaning that I do like clip snippets, and I'm just kind of touching on that for anybody that's new, that just started tuning in or trying to understand exactly my overall podcast and this project here. And basically, I will release the short story in clippets for the most of the season. You do get a good enough content that will make you want to come back or make you want to be curious about these characters that I'm bringing to life. This is actually based on my book called Mitsrayim, a memoir. I not recently, now it's been a couple of years, that I evolved that to a theatrical production, which I initially called it pretty much Moments of Love in Ancient Egypt. And then I shortened it with just the acronyms, which is MOLIAE. MOLIAE is how you will pronounce that. And it formed into a stage play, websodes, short film. And right now that production is in the process of preparing for the prestige return of MOLIAE stage play. So when I announced those dates, you will pretty much, if you're following this podcast, really get to be engaged of the characters that I bring to life. So this particular podcast here, Nichel Anderson, Short Stories and Beyond, mostly focuses on the characters, that timeline, that theme, MOLIAE in this podcast. But I also, as in my title, and beyond, go beyond that timeline and focus on either modern day or maybe a historical part of history that I'm creating a story, because I love writing, and I think storytelling is one of the very prime elements that we use as humans to communicate and to encourage and to motivate and to inspire the power of choice and how we can learn from one another in the good of light. So today's episode 31, is entitled In the Sudan, Many Secrets Run Deep to the Afar of Old. So pretty much we're going to tap into what happened last week and then move forward. But I wanted to kind of explain right quick about the premium aspect to this content. So for the month of September, I decided, just like last year when I kicked it off, I released four free short stories, and it meant that I just, you got the whole short story. And I will do that. I know last year I was really just getting it out, and I did a lot of clippets, which I'm going to do still. I released a new short story beyond the timeline of MOLIAE called Mahogany. So I have decided that I will plan to continue on from that last episode, which if you want to check that out, you can check it through my Spreaker podcast hosting site. That episode for this past summer break 2018, Mahogany. You can also get those episodes on MOLIAE YouTube channel. Okay, because all of this, everything right here at this point of this creativity through writing and producing and directing is through that book, Mitsrayim. That's what started. That was my first manuscript going forward to there. So at any rate, that will also get you more into these stories I will release. So in this particular year, of course, it's going to be, as I mentioned, still more on MOLIAE, but also create other short stories. And I do release the full short story. It's just most of it will be considered to be clip snippets of it. You do get enough, as I said before, to get the full story. Consider to be a patron of this podcast, okay, of this premium podcast on my Patreon page, and you can look for that information in the description, where it would take you right there and talk about those rewards associated with that. So let's go ahead and let's talk about, and I am going to still announce something that I'm working on if I haven't already. if you would know, because I will release a bonus saying that this is a bonus and this is what I need to announce, that I was working on something, or a couple of things during the summer break. So let's go ahead and talk about last week. Let's do the recap, okay? So the recap last week was episode 30. It started back for season 2, right? 2018 to 2019, where we are sent to the origins of Orion. So last week we witnessed Lanko. Lanko, this character is not in the book, and it came in fruition during this season 1. Okay, he's an Orion. He's a military officer. He's a part of the war that was against Mitsrayim. That we found out that Mitsrayim was in war. Now remember, if you're new to my podcast, most of these short stories that I'm doing is about MOLIAE. It's about for my book and my productions that I mentioned. And the theme last year was before the time of Princess Amelia. So Amelia hasn't been born yet, and therefore these characters for the most part have not been in any of those theatrical productions. Remember, I said before, or if you're new to it, it's only been 5. That's Princess Amelia, the 2 kings, King Tiamat, King Daniel, and then Princess Amelia best friends at the time, which is Hagar and Selma. So those 5 are really not on the scene yet. Most of them are not born yet, except the 2 kings, which I did kind of highlight that a bit during my summer break. Whereas King Daniel and King Tiamat, at this particular timeline, they are born, but they're young boys, right? They have not become rulers yet. So just to give a little hint and a little snippet of that, I will have an episode of them, because when I announced the prestige return of MOLIAE stage play, they are in it, okay? Because Princess Amelia has to choose, so you will hear a lot about them, those 2 kings, and so it will play nice to get the understanding of their younger years, as well as learn of these other characters, that some of them will be in the forthcoming play to come, and then some will not, in sense, like they kind of expand out of that, but might come back in the future after the timeline of the Mitsrayim timeline there. So speaking of last week, Lanko was in front of these new council members. They're a different sector, they're a different level of secrecy within the Orions, and so Lanko seems to be the one that made it out somehow. He wasn't in the scenes. If you listen to the finale, episode 29, on May 28th of 2018, that episode, and I encourage you to go back and listen to that episode as well. I have a video clip for your video experience, which look awesome on your smartphone or tablet or whatever. It looks good, and I encourage you to check that out, and you can get more pieces to the puzzle, right? Now, of course, to get the ending and some of the takeaway was faded out, because of course, like I said, this is still premium content. To get the full content, encourage you to be a patron member. But at any rate, Lanko is there in front of these secret council rank of the order. It's called Yukin, and it was Hanee that did the most talking back to Lanko after they discovered the destruction of Ecko. Now, you don't know what happened to Ecko. You just know something happened in the cave, and he didn't technically walked out of it, okay? That King Mahlon had the last word in that and handled it, which they were shocked that King Mahlon, after all this time, he really is alive and he's back on the world scene. So whatever that was an uprising didn't take the brother out. He's still in it. Okay, and Queen Hagar is still there. Now, of course, it seems like no one I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, that too much out of the immediate family that Queen Hagar is pregnant. All right, Lanko is telling them what happened, and that's mostly from episode 29. Where was Lanko and how did he find out about this? Was he in the other level of the cave? You don't really know that, but you just know at the moment Lanko is the one delivering to the higher ups that, the game has changed and the power is back to Mahlon, and they're still a force to be reckoned with. And so he is ordered to return back to Tiamat. Again, for the month of September, I will release the whole story. Now, does that mean that some areas are not going to be shared? Of course, I'm a writer. I got to keep you interested, right? But some of them, most part, as I mentioned when I started this, the images flashes to me and I get bits and pieces. And most of the time, I pretty much have an idea where it was going to fall. Sometimes I really don't know until I'm actually sitting there about to write it, and then the pieces come, and then it's revealed to me, and then I decide what I'm going to share. So all together of how it's all going to come together, pieces wise into that puzzle of me writing and finding out more information is when I actually sit down and tune in to these characters, and they just come to me, new, old, and so forth. So Lanko is left with inscripted messages and instructions to go to the mountains up north to give to a tribal leader, and he's told to deliver that message. There's another phase to this attack, and that's where we left it off at, right? So now let's go ahead and start for this week. Let's begin. For this week of my Season 2 podcast show, Nichel Anderson, Short Stories and Beyond, for this week, episode 31, entitled, In the Sudan, Many Secrets Went Deep to the Afar of Old. Opening scene. As King Mahlon and Queen Hagar had not made their return back to Mitsrayim, for the officials say to Mahlon returning back as full at means from his rooms in the last war. Instead, we see Grandfather Tayyib on the quest by his daughter, Queen Hagar, to visit Rulen. That sent a message to Queen Hagar in the last season episode. For secrecy and protection, Tayyib relayed a message to Rulen of their meeting only in the Rulen area, near Zimbabwe, to talk. Tayyib had 25 Mitsrayim guards and 3 of his trusted advisors of the Temple of Knowledge of 50. Wearing a long white robe trimmed in the thinnest linen gold, we see Tayyib, dark eyes of old and anew, enter the hard orange clay walls that allow the last streaks of Apsu, light of day, enter as Kingo rays engulfed, slowly enclosing the surroundings of them. Tayyib stopped and started to meditate as he felt that they were not alone in the Rulen haven anymore. He opened his eyes and could see them before they really saw Tayyib and the guards and advisors behind them. Tayyib raised his hand, motioning that only Rulen come forth further. As they approached more into the Rulen haven, Rulen had a different garment than before, more of a military attire with stripes of fabric and metal adornments on the left and right shoulder. He looked more relaxed since the last moment Tayyib saw him with Comrade Data, many Asfu cycles ago. Rulen nodded as he motioned his guards to stay behind as Rulen followed Tayyib. They both walked side by side, looking outward without saying a word until they reached the second level that only waterfalls of the tips end of the Blue Nile went through the lower canals. Tayyib spoke first, not looking over to Rulen, but straight ahead. The Queen, my daughter, sent me to speak on the behalf of the crown. Rulen followed and did not look over to Tayyib. Well, is she? Tayyib, not amused, spoke. Speak of what you seek. This moment, not of the Queen. Rulen nodded slightly. There is another that waits in the mountains, not in the north, but south, with good tidings to pursue Mitsrayim. Pausing, he looked downward and upward, still not directly at Tayyib. I can help with my forces, if King Mahlon trusts thee. Tayyib nods before speaking. We know of the disturbance from the rest. The The South has always been afar of reasoning. Who are amongst those that do against King Mahlon? Rulen. The roots are unclear, but another Orion is in the midst against Mahlon. They seek an allegiance from the southern tribal leaders. Tayyib, finally looking over to Rulen. You speak of you. Rulen, resisting the intense stare, continued to look into the waterfall of the Nile below. In time, all changes from where one stood occurs. Tayyib, about to turn around to leave, spoke to Rulen before so, that was still weary to look in Tayyib's elder eyes. Choose wisely on reason, and not on loss of a mate that did not choose you but Mahlon. Traitors are never for long afar, but the short in your destruction. Rulen felt the truth engulfed his heart as Tayyib left with the gods of Mitsrayim and his advisors. They vanished into the darkness. As Rulen stared into the waterfall, his heart continued to twist and turn into resisting the truth, pursuit to bend to the reason, to accept Queen Hagar, choice in choosing Mahlon, and she wasn't coming back to the Sudan. Suddenly, one of Rulen's guards entered. Before the guard spoke, Rulen made a decision. As he pushed the moments of memories afar into the midst of the waterfall before him. We leave at dawn to meet the Orion that speak of an alliance. Isoto, as you wish, the god spoke, before turning to leave into the darkness. End scene.